Okay, so it is impressive enough if you're getting rave reviews calling you radiant and heartbreaking in your performance on Broadway. But it's even more so when you are sharing a stage with two legendary actresses, Glenda Jackson and Laurie Metcalf. But this woman right here is doing just that. Alison Pill is currently starring in a new production of Edward Albee's Three Tall Women on Broadway, but you'll also probably recognize her if you don't have the opportunity to be in New York and see Broadway shows from movies like Milk, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Miss Sloane, I didn't put it in here, but one of my favorites, Snowpiercer, and in series like American Horror Story. Hi, Alison.
Hello.
Welcome. So I want to start by talking about this show that you're in because it's very unique. You are basically getting to play two characters in it, one of whom is a younger version of Glenda Jackson.
Yes.
I want to hear how you and then Laurie Metcalf is also playing a different version of Laurie. So you play two characters. How do you, these three amazing, talented, multi-award nominated and winning women, collaborate together to create one person?
Well, it's interesting because Glenda's obviously the kind of center of the show, and she's where we end up. So she kind of has the final say. And it's also, she's the one we're introduced to in the first part of the show. So when we were in rehearsal, it was definitely getting to know her version of this woman for, you know, a week before we even got into the second part where we're all the same person. There was not a lot of discussion about it. I think it all happened pretty naturally. And also, so much of it happened once we got in front of an audience and we're just running the show, when I feel like the physicality really started to shift and change between the three of us. And I've been able to pick up on really specific mannerisms that both of them have, which was later on. But in terms of, you know, finding the common thread, most of it is in the text. And then a lot of it is also just in the room. You know, the play is about an 81-year-old, a 91-year-old, a 52-year-old, and a 26-year-old. And so much of the dynamic between us as women in life, it plays out as well on stage. So it's kind of life feeding the stage and stage feeding life, and it's all, you know, mixed up into this amazing rehearsal process of looking up to these women and thinking about their careers, their lives, and then having the play back that up.
And you actually already knew this play. You were familiar with it.
I was.
And then it came to you, and what was it about this that made you say, yeah, I had to do this?
Well, the cast and the play. I mean, it's funny because I hadn't really, we have a bookshelf of plays, but most of them are just random things that I've picked up over time, and that was one of them. I got the fireside copy at the Strand years ago, just like, oh, there's an Albee I haven't read, and I should read Albee, and, you know, just kind of a random thing, and so it was sitting on my shelf and rereading it, you know, having read it when I was probably 25, and then rereading it now, having had a kid and being in my 30s all of a sudden, which does change things suddenly, where your peers are people in their 30s and you're an actual adult with a mortgage. And then, and just the kind of, you know, the way life looks and the way that Albee is able to study that moment of, it's not even nostalgia, it's just, it's like not, finding it hard to recognize yourself younger, trying to get into that brain space of, who is this person that didn't care about her home life? Like, who never cleaned and didn't really care because she was never home. You know, for somebody who, I'm like, that's where I spend all of my time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, who is this person that went out and had dinner places? You know, like, who is that person, you know,
Right.
who didn't just think that a really great activity was going to the green market and picking up bread, you know, which was my morning. Pretty adventurous.
Very exciting.
But it's just
when you're
like,
doing it without, like, trying to keep someone else alive, though,
Yes.
it is really exciting.
It is, yes, yeah.
It's like a vacation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. And you're playing this character who is the person before she becomes everything else.
Right, yeah.
Who is still on the precipice of so much.
Yeah.
And you talked about, I've read you talk about this play in interviews where you say you were very attracted to this too because it's a show about difficult women.
Yes. Yes, it is. It's something, and I've been thinking about it a lot in terms of this. It is a play about women. It is a play about, it's very feminine. It is entirely feminine, and it is about these women, but it is not maternal. It is not sexual in the way you think it might be. I mean, there are elements of sexuality, definitely, but it's a study of a different kind of woman than I think we're more comfortable seeing. You know, at first there's an element of she's the anti-heroine. I mean, she is not, you would not want this person to be your mom.
Right.
That's a nightmare. And you can ask Mr. Albee about it, you know, like he's written a play about it. At the same time, like studying women like that, because that is a woman too. You know, this idea that women are this soft, comforting, maternal thing is somewhat true, but it's also not everybody. And I think exploring all the colors of femininity, of womanhood, and of motherhood, and this kind of motherhood, is really interesting, and we don't see it a lot. And it's a real thing. I mean, I know so many people. I know this woman. You know, I mean, I've met women like this, and you see the development of her, and part of it is, you know, I think thwarted ambition. Part of it is when she grew up, but I also think, you know, I mean, I think the opportunities for women have shifted, but it's just it is a really interesting thing to see three women who are not easy, who are not nice, who are really smart, really funny, but not, you know, caring in the way that we think women should be.
And there is so often, whether it's in drama or in film or in literature, there traditionally has been pushback against those kinds of characters. That it's acceptable for a man to be an anti-hero.
Yeah.
It's acceptable for a man to be kind of unlikable, whether it's in a book or in a play. But there's an but if a woman is, then it's like I didn't like that character, so I didn't like that piece of work then.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's far more likely that she will need to get her comeuppance than it is for a male anti-hero, like the feeling of that. And in this play, it's not really, I mean, I kind of say it's like Scrooge if he didn't wake up with a redo, you know, like it's just like, because it's reality, you know, it's, but I do think there is, I think men are forgiven far more for being, are more likable. I think if this play were written about a man who is as funny, as caustic, and as self-obsessed as this woman is, you know, I think he would be allowed to be more likable than she is. But I also think, you know, Albee wrote about the fact that he had written this play about a woman who people met and did not like, and then everybody saw this play and they loved her. And what had he done?
Yeah.
Because he had made his mother a human in a way that she, you know, I mean, whether or not she deserved it, I think everybody deserves a real study of their life to go, this is what it was about, this is where it could have turned.
I'm really curious about that because this is a play that was originally on Broadway in 1991. Mm-hmm. That's a long time ago. Mm-hmm. That's even I'm thinking like that's even before Anita Hill. That's before so many changes in our culture that we're still definitely feeling, particularly over the last year. And I'm wondering what it feels like for you coming into this show now that is about these three women, that is such a female dynamic show, what the responses are from audiences, what they're feeling coming into it.
Truly all I cared about when I signed on was, I mean, this idea, I really didn't know, and I love Scott Rudin, who's our producer, and I think he produces really, because just to me, looking at it, I was like, how is this a commercial show? like to me, I mean, I was worried about butts and seats. So let alone the response, whatever, critically or people who actually came to it. I was more concerned that people wouldn't come because of this. There's that thing of 3 women talking to each other.
Right.
One of whom is
and they're not
old,
even Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, what are we? What is that? And so the first excitement was, we've had sold out shows. We've had sold out shows since I think our second preview, which is really exciting.
That's
and
amazing.
Really thrilling. And so the responses have been, I think people find, I don't know, people have only hinted at how unlikable they find my character in the first act. I love C in the first act. I have such warmth for her because she's trying really, she's like an OCD kind of struggling to keep it together.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have love for that perfectionist person who's doing her best. And I also think there's an interesting interplay between the first part and the second part, and though they're not the same person, just an unlikable perfectionist woman who kind of talks too much.
Mm-hmm.
And what people's response to that is, by the time you've heard more of her story in the second part, I think people forgive a lot. And I think that's an interesting thing to play out for audiences.
Yeah, and it feels like maybe finally we are coming into this moment culturally where we are saying that like even men can enjoy women's stories.
Yeah,
like, even,
I know, and it seems so silly. But
it's right, because we just assume that like women will go see men's stories.
Right.
We just assume that
they're just called stories.
Right, exactly. It's like there's women's literature and then there's literature.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it feels different now.
It's
and you've been
starting to. Yeah.
You've been doing this since you were 10 years old.
Yeah.
And you're still super young, by the way. But you've been doing this since you were 10 years old. And I'm curious, like, preparing for this, I was looking at the roles you've done, and I've looked at your career. You have sidestepped so many of the pitfalls that someone who goes into their career as a child goes through her adolescence and into adulthood in terms of the roles that you've chosen, in terms of the projects you've been involved. Like, you have played really smart characters, really interesting characters. That can't be easy in your industry to find those kinds of opportunities.
Well, I'm a character actor, and I've just been one since I was smaller than, most people think character actors are older, but I don't. That's what I feel like I've done, and those are the careers that I've always admired because you get to do cooler stuff. In terms of, a lot of it's unintentional, and then some of it is just, and it's not even intentional, it's just what I was capable of. Like, I wasn't capable of doing dumb shit. Like, I just would kill myself. I would just kill myself.
There's a lot of dumb shit out there. There's a lot of super dumb shit.
And I also feel like theater saved me, because at the transitional moment when I moved from Toronto to New York, when I was officially an adult, I had just turned 18. I started doing theater seriously, and that was because the roles that existed gave me a completely different thing to kind of measure other roles against, which is interesting because the complicated women. First of all, I was working with women directors, women playwrights, in women-driven projects in a way that I don't think I could have found in film and TV at that point. And not in the same way. It's just and for somebody not famous who could just get these roles, I was like, oh, this is what I'm interested in. And I think that was a saving grace in my late teens, early 20s, because I was working with astonishingly talented people and had an expectation that the female roles should be complicated, fleshed out, and not sexual objects.
Do you feel like the field is different now for a young actress coming into the profession than it was when you started? Do you feel like maybe there are more of those women behind the scenes?
I think so, and I think it's definitely starting to turn. I think we have, I think I'm still in a state of, nobody fuck it up. You know what I mean? Like it still feels really, I know I've worked with multiple amazing women in positions of power and writers and just, showrunners, and it's really great. And I've felt that be the case in my career more often than not. But there is an element now where it feels like a precipice where you're like, okay, for real, everybody has to be really good, right? And what I want, what you want to see is actual parody, which is like, guess what? Men make shitty movies.
Yeah.
That's okay. They're allowed
movies.
To, and really good,
And then they get to go on.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's where my fear lies now. Is what I am hopeful is, for women growing up as actresses today, that the expectations are just different. Where, it'll just be less weird for any of it. Like what I would love to see is it just being like, what are you talking about? Of course, of course I'm going to be a director. Fuck you. What? Like that's what I want to see. Just like not even knowing, and that'll be really exciting
to have that kind of confidence.
Yeah.
Right.
Where you're like, oh yeah, why are we having this conversation? Shut up.
Yeah. I can totally do it. Right.
Sure, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
That's what I look forward to.
So speaking of all of parody in the world, I want to ask you. I want to end by talking a little bit about an organization that you're very close to, Women for Women.
Yes.
Which works with women in 8 countries around the world that have been affected by conflict and war. Tell me a little bit how you got involved with them.
I heard about their work through Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Woodunn's book Half the Sky, which was a real eye-opener and is excellent. And at the back of the book, there's just a list of people doing real on-the-ground female empowerment programs that work and that have proven themselves. And Women for Women is one of them. And then it was really, I was just a donor, and then I got an email to be invited to an event and started, emailing back and forth with people there, and now I'm so honored to be one of their ambassadors and getting to go to the luncheon. And I just had lunch with their CEO, she's in DRC right now, visiting, and that's one of the they've had a DRC program for years, and just talking about the difference between Rwanda and DRC right now, of where Rwanda is post-war and technologically and infrastructure-wise, and cross a bridge and suddenly you're in an entirely different territory, and just the level of sexual violence that's been part of these wars and the trauma that's gone through generations. Anyway, they do programs, year-long programs, to teach literacy, numeracy, and build communities of women to invest together, to diversify crops and send kids to school. And it is all community-based. And I want to go. I want to visit. I really want to visit.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And when you raise up women, you raise up the world.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Alison Pill, thank you so much
for
joining us today. If you are privileged to be in New York City this spring, you can go just a few blocks down the street from Salon and check out, if you can get a ticket, and see Alison Pill in 3 Tall Women. Thank you so much, Alison.
Thank
it's a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.